All right, so in this episode, guys, we're going to talk to Bob. Bob's an amazing human being. We love Bob, and we worked with Bob in the past, and we're not anymore. But it was interesting to bring in Bob. So Bob is going to be talking about how he's trying to manage something that's an additional service offering inside the gym, specifically childcare, and how he's trying to navigate that cost versus the delivery of that service inside the gym. Really interesting episode because we dive into a lot of things. So enjoy. All right, we've got Bob, one of my favorite people. Yeah, if you've ever been on a Zoom call with Bob, he'll come off mute faster than anybody you've ever seen in your life. We have worked with Bob in the past, right? And we're going to talk about what some things that Bob has going on in the box. But before we do that, Bob, give us a quick introduction. Name of your box, how long you've been open, anything else you want to put on the bumper sticker.
Yeah, super. So my name is Bob Gillingham at CFGB. We are getting results through nutrition, fitness, and accountability. And we've been a CrossFit affiliate for 12 years and just going through a whole evolution of, fitness and nutrition and more recently working with Best Hour of Their Day and just kind of building on our success.
Okay. Glen Burnie, for anybody who's in the Maryland area.
Absolutely.
Okay, so how long has the box been open?
12 years.
12 years, and then how many members are you guys sitting at right now?
About 170.
170, okay, cool. And then what are you guys looking at on average revenue-wise on a monthly basis?
Currently around $27,000.
27, okay, yeah. So you guys are moving into phase 3. Okay, and then talk to me about what is your biggest pain point, right? I know you have that one right now, but I want you to kind of unpack it for us a little bit. What is the problem you are trying to solve that is going to make your life infinitely better?
Yeah, absolutely. So we being an affiliate for a while, what we find is we kind of are evolving to provide the best value for our members and for our staff and our coaches. And over the last couple of years, we started adding a childcare program. We always had a safe place for the kids to hang out during class, but it was important for us to kind of provide supervision for the children who were there, and some of our coaching staff also started having more babies and being part of that. So we started providing childcare during the time that those coaches were coaching classes, which were also the times that we had stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home dads, and things like that. So it just made sense for us to provide that to everybody, all of our members. We made it available at no cost to them, and it's kind of grown a little bit. So now it's 3 classes every day that we're providing the childcare. So the 9:30 class in the morning, at the 4 o'clock class, and the 5:15 class, we have 2 attendants in there working with the kids, and they're doing arts and crafts and things like that. And meanwhile, mom and dad are out there working out and getting the best results of their lives. So we're doing that Monday through Friday, and we're talking about doing that also on Saturday. We just kind of see that that's a really valuable thing. But I also know from a business point of view that I want to make sure that the value we're providing kind of matches up with the cost of providing as well. So that the cost of providing that for a year is probably roughly around $25,000 a year, or about $2,000.
Okay, quick note, everybody, on verbiage. So if you notice right there, what Bob said is this makes sense. And we don't know, because there was nothing that was defined that would tell us that something makes sense or not. And making the distinction between something is being requested of me and something makes sense is where we have to figure out where does our objective lens lie, and how do we start to determine, simply because there's a request inbound doesn't necessarily mean that it makes sense. I have to look at, is this an inbound request that we can deliver on appropriately, and do the numbers work? If the numbers work, then it makes sense. But simply because somebody asked doesn't mean it makes sense. Okay, I want to actually go back to something you said. You said it just made sense, and that's where I will gently push back, and I'm like, does it make sense? But we'll talk about, does it make sense or does it not make sense?
Right.
And I think that's probably the first thing we would chat about, is simply because there's inbound demand doesn't necessarily mean that I need to fulfill on that demand. Now, I'm all for it. and we'll talk about it. But I think it's always worth just like putting that into affiliate owners' ears, is like take a pause. But you got grandbabies. I know you're all in for the kids. Like, I get it. So it probably does make sense because that's the vibe that you guys have.
It is the vibe, yeah. The culture.
At Glen Burnie.
Right,
So I think it's part of the culture. So then how do we start to solve that riddle becomes the question. So about $2,000 a month. What's that? How much profit margin, or what's that doing inside of the budget?
Yeah, so it's probably somewhat of a wash, because like if I think about like, well, if we just didn't do that, who would that affect, right? And so there's you know, the coaches that have kids, and they're bringing their children, because they're stay-at-home moms, to the gym while they're coaching. That would impact them. And, you know, just kind of looking at the members that are using the service, it's going to impact them to some degree as well. I mean, so like, I think it's somewhat of a wash, meaning if I save $25,000, I might lose $23,000 in revenue. So it's kind of like, and then I would have that other problem to kind of solve of trying to figure that out.
Well, because it's a wash, right? When you do the math on that, it's actually nets out to be almost the exact same minus the problems. Now, that doesn't mean that we get rid of the kids in that scenario. But if you're saying, hey, it's basically a wash, and if I get rid of it, I'm probably going to lose these revenue numbers, and I'll have the exact same profit margin percentage, then the question we have to answer is like, is this worth our time and effort? And if the answer is yes, then we have to figure out how to solve that problem. So how many kids roughly, or how many families are taking advantage of the childcare?
Yeah, for sure.
Like roughly?
About 9, we'll say.
Okay, so 9 families. Right. Okay, I've already got many ideas on this. And you're running these, so right out of the gate, the first thing that comes to my mind, just so that we're looking at this, you're, Cody, make sure my spelling is on point here, okay? So childcare, and you're running what classes? So 3 times a day.
3 times a day.
What classes?
9:30.
9:30, that one makes perfect sense. Yeah.
5:15.
For 4 p.m. and then 5:15. Okay. Right. And then that is Monday through Friday. Monday through Friday. Okay. Yeah. And then you said you have 2 attendees in there, or 2 attendants in there. And then what's the pay rate for them?
$16.50 to $20.
Okay. An hour. Got it. An hour. Okay. So right out of the gate, and so the number that keys me in on this is immediately I would change this. Because if you only have 9 people, that 9 people doesn't warrant 3 sessions a day, 3 kids in there. That would be the first thing that I would go to. Right. You know, and say, hey, which one probably has the greatest return on time? It's probably this one. If I've, know anything about a CrossFit gym, that 9 a.m., 9:30 is universal across the board. That's where like the moms or the, work from home folks are probably attending in that like mid to late morning. Do you track attendance across these 3? Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. What's the average across those 3?
So I was looking at that, and it's about 3 check-ins per class on average.
Okay. Yeah. And then, so it's basically evenly spread.
It looks pretty even, right? But you're right. Like, these 2 guys are the more popular ones, with this one kind of trailing off.
Yeah, we when I was doing evenings at CrossFit Rife, that we tried that kind of later. I think we did it at 5 p.m. back in the day, and we very quickly killed it. Like, it was like 1 or 2 people, and it just didn't make any sense. So I really want to hammer this point here, which is, in a lot of instances, we as business owners, and I've been this person many times, will be reticent to give up revenue even if I have the exact same margin with less problems. So if you're running a business at $25,000 a month and you had a $5,000 profit, and you went down to $20,000 a month in revenue, and I still had a $5,000 profit, but had 40% less problems, I would argue that's a better business. And a lot of times we see drop in revenue as a negative thing, when in some instances it actually can be a good thing. So if you're roughly $2K a month in cost, right? This is kind of a weird question. This is a kind of like a gut question. What number would you be okay eating in order to offer childcare?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a tricky question.
That's why I asked, yeah.
I think of it like, not so much like I want to lose this much, or I'm okay with losing this much money, or giving this much. But I think I do have somewhat of an answer, because it's not just benefiting the members,
Right.
it's also benefiting the staff.
Correct.
So, it's kind of like a rough split 50-50,
Yep.
where, a large part of that benefit is going to the staff.
Yep.
So we could say 1K.
1K. All right. So we would want to basically cut this by 50%. And then we could reverse engineer that into multiple ways to address this. Which is like, hey, how would I basically go from 15 to, call it 7, 8, and maybe still keep some of the evenings in there. So maybe I keep the 9:30 Monday through Friday, and then I go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or we make up a number. We go Tuesday, Thursday, where we offer one of these two, probably the 5:15, I think would probably make the most sense. And that probably gets you right to the 1K, simply by just cutting fulfillment in half to the classes that make the most sense, right? So just literally go from 15 per week to 7 or 9,
Right.
and that brings me down. So that's the easy math, right? Now, how do we match the math with coming up with some way to evaluate how do I do this, right? And the way we would look at this is we've got a matrix that we would work off of, right? So I've got this XY axis here, and I've got price paid, and then I've got cost to serve
Right.
over here, right? And what we look at is really what I've got is like childcare basically is over here, right? It's free, and it's costing me a tremendous amount of money to service that. Now, there is a scenario in which you would continue to do that, okay? So if I look at how this works, if I was to draw a line this way, I would want to look at serving everybody above the line, right? So what I've got is I've got low, high, low, high, meaning they pay low price point, and this would be a kind of a 2x2 matrix, right?
Yep.
Right?
It's getting there.
And so this is low price paid, low cost to serve,
Right.
high price paid, right? These are like cash cows, right?
Right, yeah.
These are like really, really high margin customers that I serve. And then what we're talking about right now is I've got this group of people, let's just say that childcare falls over here, right? So it's definitely under the line, but it's high cost to serve, and they're not paying anything for that additional service.
Yeah.
So I could go one of two ways, but I think putting it in a visual format just kind of shows me to objectively how would I assess this situation, and then do I want to make that decision? Because here's what I would tell you. There is a scenario in which you choose to keep this and not change anything about it.
Right.
What does that look like? And the way you would make that decision is if you say, hey, if the value provided to the end user or the customer is so high that this falls in the absolute delight bucket, then you choose to eat the cost over here. Now, I don't know that we're necessarily there. This is probably something in the middle. And then could we move this group of people even just a little bit to get them maybe to like closer to over here where there's like some cost associated with that while reducing my costs in there. But like looking at this is how you would evaluate it. And when you start having things, and if this wasn't childcare, it could be personal training, it could be anything, but you're looking at where does it fall in this matrix and say, do I want to continue to do that? And then how do you make that decision? But just acknowledging, I have to look at this objectively and say, they definitely fall here. But they definitely fall, and they don't pay me anything for this service. And it is high cost to me. It's costing me $25K a year in order to do that.
Yeah.
Now, can we meet in the middle? Like, this doesn't mean we kill the idea. We go back to the math and we say, all right, well, you've already told me that like it's worth it to me to pay 1K out of pocket to continue to provide that. So then we start moving those people up, and we start by going from 15 to 7 in that scenario. And this becomes a much more financially tenable scenario for me.
Yep.
And the reason this is important is it's not just a 1K savings that we're doing. Think of it differently. It's like, I'm not just saving $1,000 a month. I now have an additional $12,000 to reinvest in my clients. And this goes into how you pitch the change.
Yeah, that's cool.
Which is like, hey, we're now going to provide more value to you, coming back to this and say, hey, I want to make you guys super happy. And then they're willing to move in a certain direction now, because I'm like, hey, we're going to reinvest that $12K in the savings to offer, you know, a more robust kids room with, you know, toys and educational resources, and be like, hey, we're going to take it and we're going to dump it right back, you know, into those little booger eaters and make sure that they're just amazing people, right? And that's how you start to communicate that to the member base, because I don't want to just cut it, right? This is part of like the communication model. I want to work through that scenario and say, how do I cut and provide more value at the same time, which is quite a riddle in order to solve that, but it is doable. So we did the math. We know how to objectively look at where they fall in this price paid cost to serve matrix, at which point now I can start to unpack, like, do I want to deal with this or not? And there'd be a ton of stuff here that would definitely not. I would just be like, just kill it. We're not going to do it anymore.
Right.
This doesn't fall in that, because we already talked about this falls in your culture. This is what you want to do. Great. Let's keep it. Let's just make it a better financial scenario. And I think that's two things. One, I think, is just reduce these. I think that's just way too high for 9 kids or 9 families, effectively. We could go to them, have those conversations, be like, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to keep these days, just to let you guys know it's not really going to, it just doesn't make sense for us financially. What we're going to do is we're going to reinvest the savings back into that.
Right.
Or, again, just ask them to pay, right? So how could I offset the cost?
Right.
Well, part of that is have them pay, right? So you can look at a couple different scenarios, right? Charge for the service, right? I've got 3 options I can look at. Charge, cut, co-op, okay? So then we have to look at that and we have to say, which one of those are we gonna go with? All of them are good options. Key man risk is a recurring theme in every business all the time, at basically every point in the business. Every affiliate will go through multiple phases of key man risk. And we have to, and key man risk is simply saying there is a single point of failure or a single person inside of the business, whether it's coaching, admin, marketing, sales, doesn't matter. What you have to understand about that is it's a constant risk inside of the business, and I will have to solve it multiple times as the business grows. What you'll be solving is you'll be solving a different role inside of the business, whether it's coaching on the floor versus admin versus marketing versus sales versus GM. But you will have to solve that problem repeatedly as you grow and you move to larger scales in the business. And you could have a combination of the 3 of those.
Right.
And say, hey, well, I do want to charge a little bit for it. And let's just say that all 9 families, I charge them, $50 a month. And that gives me $450. Again, takes my 1,000 down to 550. So now it's very reasonable to them to have unlimited childcare for the month. So this is still a killer deal. Cut some classes inside that. And then maybe if you wanted to cut your cost even more, you could run this in a co-op fashion, which is like, hey, if you guys want that, I need you guys to volunteer, 3 to 5 hours across each family every single month. Very minimal to them. Most of them would probably take it. And now I've saved a whole lot of money. And I've saved all $2,000 while not pulling the thing away.
Yeah, right.
Right? Because if your gym's like mine, it would be very likely that I would have a mutiny in the gym if I took away childcare. There'd be like moms with pitchforks and stuff like that coming in to beat me up. And we don't want that.
No, we don't want that.
So I think just working through that scenario, but I really want to come back to this one, which is like, first we have to work through this scenario and just like understand that in a business, if I have people that fall over here, it's just not a sustainable business model, right? Business is not sustainable if it is charitable, right? Or gratuitous. Like there has to be some value creation, value exchange, capture inside of that. If you have people over there, I have to figure out what to do with them, right? Unless you make that strategic decision that is over deliver, because people are so over the top about it that there is like a tangential return to me on the back end somewhere else,
Right.
Okay. And then you run the math and you say, oh, okay, well, I can just redesign this whole thing so that it fits inside whatever number I want to. And you go charge, cut, co-op, right? And I would work through one of those 3 models, at which point everybody's probably happier, right? Because, and again, you can always frame this as, hey, the savings that we're gonna do, that's 12 to 25 to 18K going back into the business to enhance your experience here in order to do that. And it's a win-win across the board for everybody.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I really like that perspective, because when you just think of like the dollars and the costs and things like that, you can lose track of the fact that you can reallocate those expenses and provide maybe some other value or better value than what you're doing. So I like that. That's pretty cool.
So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, definitely. This helps a lot. And then also like on the looking at things this way, this resonates a lot, you know, over the years, and just looking at anything that we've ever provided where we didn't charge for it.
Yeah.
There's, you know, I mean, not only is that not necessarily very helpful, but when people pay for something, they're investing in it, they're seeing the value in it, they value it more. So I think that, you know, when we look at the solution, there should be some investment in it just for that reason as well. And so, like, you've given us a couple of different tools. And I think the other thing that really kind of stands out is it's not just childcare, right? It could be anything in my affiliate.
It's literally anything that has some sort of exchange for service, you know, provided. And we have to map that out, because ultimately not understanding this creates financial duress on the business, because I don't understand that there's a crazy imbalance here between what value capture the business is getting versus the value creation that we're providing.
So maybe just for our affiliate community, you know, those affiliates out there that are looking at, you know, maybe should I do like a towel service, or should I do this, or they're considering different things. What would you be telling them as far as like questions they could be asking, you know, relative to something like this that maybe would help them out from the get-go, where they would come out with a better solution long term?
Well, I think that's just a conversation about like, what do people value? People might not value towel service, at which point, don't worry about it, unless you've decided like that's just something that I want to throw in there. But we're all running the math on it. If towel service puts you out of business, then I'm going to tell you not to run towel service. So it's not a absolute statement. It's always like more contextual. Again, I do think inside of the affiliate model, context matters. Like when you say this is important to me as a business owner, then we start to get rid of it off of the table. Like that's the vibe that you want to create. Cool. Let's figure out how to make that work inside of your affiliate. And there's a very tangible way to do that. We just have to run the numbers, make this conscious decision that like, hey, I'm going to try to move them here somewhere, and do that. And then what this does for you as the leader inside of the community, this allows me to communicate it appropriately.
Yeah, right.
And everybody will be on board at that point.
Cool.
So. You run a great box, Bob, and I think this is going to be a pretty easy shift for you. And hopefully this helps you as you work through that.
Well, thanks, Fern.
Awesome.
I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, brother.
Great.
Cool.
Thanks for checking out this episode of the Best Hour of Their Day podcast. We appreciate you listening and choosing to have us help you in your passion for coaching and affiliate ownership. You can find more episodes just like this on all podcast platforms. If you're interested in learning more, you can reach out to us on any social media platforms, or you can visit www.besthouroftheirday.com to book a call. If you found this episode helpful for you, please share it so that we can help other coaches and affiliate owners to help build a bigger and stronger CrossFit community. Thanks for listening.